Hello. This isn't a normal kind of setup for most of my videos, so I apologise. I look a little bit, yeah. I had a tutorial earlier with my PIC supervisor, and I expressed my kind of difficulty with feeling like I wasn't confident with forming in my space yet. And she mentioned something very, very important, which is, well, just go and be in that space, be active in that space. Doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as you're in that space, acknowledging yourself as part of the environment that's there. So, with that in mind, about maybe an hour or so ago, a couple of hours ago now, I walked to the Moor and stayed in the Moor and kind of circulated it a couple of times and just observed what was going on there at night, because it's such a vibrant kind of place in the daytime, because there's loads of buses and taxis and people travelling, like, as an intersection. It is an intersection, so there's loads of people going all the different ways, and in the evening it's completely different. Yes, there's still buses, there's still taxis and stuff like that, but it's not nearly as saturated as it is in the daytime. There's no stall, there's no students, there's no locals, there's just nothing really. There are the odd people wandering around and stuff like that, going to various places, like going out for a meal, going for a drink, stuff like that. And I was stood sort of on the outside of the piazza, and one of the things I've been encouraged to look at is kind of thinking about the grey area of performance, and sort of like, what is the thing that makes people acknowledge a performance as a performance. So the idea of gesture and exchanging looks and exchanging sort of an agreement between performer and audience member that makes it a performance. And that was really kind of a weird concept for me to try and get my head around. So with the advice in mind, I went to the space, I circulated the Moor a few times, and surely enough, there was a kind of performance thing that happened that wasn't me that was performing, it was other people. So I kind of stood on the outskirts of the piazza, and a gentleman comes out of Prezzo's, and this guy is kind of done up really nice, you know, suit and all that sort of thing, and he's smoking a cigarette. But the way that he was stanced and the way that he was kind of holding himself looked as if he was some kind of grandeur character from a commedia dell'arte play, or he looked like he was about to recite some kind of like really important monologue or soliloquy of some kind. And I think that there was kind of an exchange of acknowledgement, kind of like acknowledging that we were both in that same space at the same time. And I had taken a photo of the entire space, but he was in it, dead in the middle. He was just in the middle. You could just make out his the light of his cigarette sort of in the photo. So yeah, that for me was like the little bit of performance. He wasn't exactly acknowledging the fact that I was there as an audience member. It was the fact that he acknowledged that there was another human being in this space that is, quite frankly, empty, and there's no one there apart from us two on the piazza. And I kind of exchanged a little bit of a performative thing, I guess, was that he did perform the act of lighting a cigarette, standing there and smoking his cigarette, and I had taken my headphones out by this point in order to be able to take the photo, and I did my whole kind of personal ritual of seeing what song I wanted, putting my headphones back in, sort of getting used to what music I was listening to, and then carrying on with what I was doing. And then there was a bit of an exchange of glances at these two little things that happened. And the grand scheme of things, it seems really, really, really insignificant, but that is the kind of grey area that I want to be looking at, is how many of those little moments can happen in the space of half an hour. How many of those little moments can happen in the space of an hour or a day without us even realising, or without us truly acknowledging it until we properly acknowledge it in the way I have. So the light bulb moment has gone off. And yeah, so it's meant that the nature of my performances may be a little bit different, and it may mean that actually it will be more about the grey area of performance rather than going from routines straight into a performance. It would be about sort of sitting in that grey area and acknowledging the fact that my performing is routine, and it is a kind of part of the everyday, and I can become part of the everyday if I choose to use my performances in such a way, if I use my kind of performance tasks in such a way that I end up becoming a performance that is recognised as a performance in the space. It may or may not happen, it may happen, it may not, it may be the word of mouth helps a great deal. I would rather do a lot of stuff by word of mouth than people start talking about, oh, you know, have you seen such and such who was on the Moor the other day? Far more, I would rather that was the way that people recognised it as a performance, than if I said, this is what I'm doing, this is a performance, stipulating to an audience that this is a performance. So I really want to make it up to a kind of mutual consent almost of, yes, I acknowledge that this is a performance on my part, and the audience member or the general public acknowledge it as a performance too. So that was my little thing that happened this evening, and I will probably be going to that space again tomorrow morning and just sort of sitting there and being in that space again, seeing if any of this sort of stuff happens again, which I'm hoping it does. I'm sure it probably will do at some point. So for the time being, I am going to sign out. Good night.